So, back in 1961, a psychologist sets up this experiment, an experiment to test the absolute limits of obedience. But what he found was something else entirely. It was a really, really uncomfortable truth about where we draw the line between our own conscience and our willingness to just follow orders. Just think about that for a second. Put yourself in this situation. You're in a sterile room, and an expert in a crisp lab code, a clear authority figure, gives you a simple instruction. Inflict pain on another human being. What's your gut reaction? Your immediate, confident answer is almost certainly going to be, "No way! Of course not." We all like to believe we're guided by this unwavering moral compass. But what if that compass could be completely spun around by authority? What if, under just the right kind of pressure, most of us, would cause extreme harm to another person just because we were told to? Well, this is the terrifying question that a man named Stanley Milgram set out to answer. So, the year is 1961. We're at Yale University. Now, at the time, the world was watching the trial of a Nazi official, Adolf Eichmann, and his defense for his monstrous actions, it was simply, "I was just following orders." And that phrase sparked a question for psychologist Stanley Milgram. Could ordinary people, people like you and me, become agents in some terrible, destructive process just by obeying authority? Now, the real genius of this experiment was its deception. As you can see here, participants would always draw a rigged slip of paper that made them the teacher. The learner, who was secretly an actor, was strapped into a chair. The task, a simple word test. But the punishment for a wrong answer was an electric shock, and it went up by 15 volts for every single error, all the way up to 450 volts, which is just unbelievable. And if the teacher hesitated for even a second, the experimenter in the lab coat would just calmly insist with one of 4 prods, like, "You have no other choice, you must go on." Okay, so the stage is set. You can just feel the tension in that room, can't you? The click of each switch, the fake screams coming from the next room, and that calm, unwavering voice of authority just telling you to keep going. So how far do these people actually go? Well, the answer is way more disturbing than anyone could have predicted. 100%. Let that sink in. Every single participant kept administering shocks all the way up to 300 volts, a level that was clearly marked intense shock. And at this point, the learner was screaming, begging them to stop. And yet, not one person had disobeyed the experimenter, not a single one. And this is the number that has haunted psychology for decades. 65%. 65% of the participants, just ordinary people, remember, went all the way. They flipped the final switch, 450 volts, which was labeled with a terrifying XXX. That's 2/3 of them. They obeyed to the very, very end, even when the learner had fallen completely and horribly silent. So, here's the final tally. It shows the stark reality of it all. 2/3 of people obeyed authority, completely, overriding their own conscience. Only 1/3 defied the experimenter and stopped.
And this forces us to ask the most important question of all. Why? I mean, what could possibly make good people do something like this?
So, were these people secretly cruel? Were they monsters deep down? No. Actually, Milgram argued that the situation itself was the real driver here. It activated a kind of psychological switch, a mechanism that really helps explain this deeply uncomfortable behavior. He gave it a name, the Agentic State. And as this definition explains, it's basically a mental shift where you stop seeing yourself as responsible. You become an instrument, an agent for someone else's will. The person in the lab coat is in charge. They're responsible. You're just flipping the switches. And it's a trap that starts so small. I mean, the first shock is only 15 volts. It's like a tiny buzz. The next one is 30. Each step is just a little bit more, and this slow, gradual escalation makes it incredibly hard to find a place to draw the line. Because if 150 volts was okay, then why isn't 165? And if you didn't stop then, why would you stop now? It's this slippery slope that just pulls you down one small, obedient step at a time. Now look, it's really easy to just dismiss this whole thing as a historical curiosity, right? Some strange experiment from a totally different era. But that would be a very dangerous mistake, because the psychological forces that Milgram found are all around us, every single day. Think about it. The lab code has been replaced by a manager's title, or a military rank, or maybe even the pressure of a digital mob. It's the employee who follows an unethical order, telling themselves, "Hey, I'm just doing my job."
Or it's the person who joins a vicious online pylon, hiding behind their screen and becoming this anonymous agent for the crowd's anger. The shock generator is gone, but that agentic state, that feeling of passing responsibility to someone else, it's more prevalent than ever.
So what this all comes down to is that the Milgram experiment holds up a mirror, and it forces us to confront a really uncomfortable truth, not about them, but about us. It reveals the hidden power that authority has in all of our lives.
And it absolutely challenges that convenient belief we all have, that our own morality is totally unshakable.
And this right here is the final chilling takeaway. The real danger in the world isn't from some cartoon villain or an obvious monster. It's from ordinary people who, in a critical moment, just stop listening to their conscience and simply obey. The experiment might be over, but its question echoes louder than ever today. When an authority figure tells you to push the button, what will you do?